So Jen Psaki, who's now a favorite of, partisan Democratic types, she was doing her job the other day, having this press conference with the media, and she let something slip here that she thinks is like casual and obvious and reasonable, and well, everybody had a very different reaction to it in the real world because this would set a horrible precedent. Watch.
A couple of the steps that we have, that could be constructive for the public health of the country are providing for Facebook or other platforms to measure and publicly share the impact of misinformation on their platform and the audience it's reaching. Also with the public, with all of you, to create robust enforcement strategies that bridge their properties and provide transparency about rules. You shouldn't be banned from one platform and not others for providing misinformation out there. Taking faster action against harmful posts.
That is absolutely terrifying. So she, as a spokesperson for the Joe Biden administration, the White House, the executive branch of the United States government, very, very powerful position, she's casually chatting about, hey, here's what we want social media giants to do. We want them to censor and deplatform and ban, and we want there to be more coordination between the giant social media platforms so that when one of them acts to ban somebody or deplatform somebody, it's across all of the platforms. So, in other words, if there's any sort of infraction, if anything is said that we think is spreading misinformation, you should get the internet death penalty on all of the platforms. Now, by the way, this is very close to what's actually happened before, because I don't know how many of you guys remember this, but how long ago was it now? Maybe 2 years or 3 years or something. Alex Jones was banned from one of the platforms, and on the same day, it was like every single big social media platform banned him. I think there was maybe one holdout. I think Twitter held out longer, and then eventually they got rid of him too. I don't remember all the specifics, but I do remember it feeling like a highly coordinated effort to say, well, now we're just going to drop the hammer on this guy across the board. With Trump, same thing on the January 6th incident. It was all of the different platforms dropped him like the same time. And I think now they're deviating in terms of, is he permanently going to stay off or what's going to happen here? Some of them are permanently keeping him off, but others say, hey, we're going to review this in a year or two or something like that. Again, I don't remember all the specifics. So, this is concerning, and it's also concerning. I have an issue with the social media platforms on their own determining this stuff. I don't know that Silicon Valley oligarch billionaires should have that degree of control over the public discourse. But I definitely have an issue with the federal government getting involved and talking to these companies and telling them who they think is spreading misinformation and whatnot. And if you don't have a problem with it, stop and think about, what if it's a person who's president, who's from the party I disagree with more, who I hate even more, whose judgment I do not trust at all? Because once you set this precedent, and you have one administration do it, you could have an administration with a totally different ideology having the same power. This is exactly what happened when, civil libertarians were screaming, oh my God, don't do torture, don't, abandon due process, because then, even if you trusted somebody like Obama with those powers, which you shouldn't, but even if you did, then comes in Donald Trump and he has the authority too. So the same thing is going on here. The federal government working with social media companies to censor and deplatform and ban? How is that not a wanton violation of the First Amendment, by the way? I mean, I guess you can make a really, big stretch of an argument that, well, since they're not technically jailing people for their speech, it should be allowed. But I'm not buying that argument, because this is definitely a restriction of free speech from citizens, and it's over things that are overtly political. The other thing is, how do you read intentions? It's very difficult to surmise somebody's intentions, because, if somebody's spreading misinformation, but they genuinely believe the things that they're saying, that's just what happens in a free society. People are wrong all the time about a multitude of things. So how can you just casually be like, well, I think this person's spreading misinformation and it's intentional. Wouldn't you have to prove that it's intentional? And even if it was intentional, isn't that also just part of the discourse, even though it's something that's condemnable and should be looked down on and whatnot? I mean, this is a clear violation, maybe of the legality of the First Amendment, but definitely of the principle and the spirit of the First Amendment. The federal government telling the outlets that represent our new digital public square, you should censor and ban and deplatform more, and you should coordinate across all the platforms. By the way, that's the other thing is, they always go right to internet death penalty. Whenever we have this conversation about, you know, wrongthink and thought crimes and things you shouldn't say, it's always like, you're permanently banned if you cross a line that we deem as a line. Seems a little harsh, doesn't it? The internet death penalty? Again, this goes back to the Alex Jones conversation, but the point I made in that conversation is, listen, I always lean more on the side of free speech, but there are still rules. You can't do direct threats of violence. You can't, like, harass somebody. You can't dox somebody. You can't do clear examples of libel or slander or whatever, or impersonation. Like, you can't do any of that stuff. So there are still rules. But my argument was, even in the case of Alex Jones, if you found specific things that clearly violated the limited rules, well then take down those specific videos. So if he doxed some Sandy Hook family members or something crazy like that, well then pull down that particular video. And, you know, you could give some sort of whatever, but you got a 2-day suspension or some shit after there's a clear, transparent process in place. But that's not what we're talking about. It's always like, you know, if we see something we don't like, we're just going to say, ban it forever. Internet death penalty. Now they're saying across every single platform. This precedent that's being set up is horrible. Listen, I don't want corporations micromanaging the public discourse in the same way I don't want the government micromanaging public discourse. But if what she's saying is what's happening, now we're getting the worst of all worlds. So you get government officials who have their own axes to grind and their own biases. They're working with Silicon Valley oligarch billionaires who control these very powerful companies to determine who should and shouldn't be banned, what should and shouldn't be said. And by the way, who's going to watch the Watchmen is the age-old question. You know, there is no such thing as a ministry of truth. Because there are plenty of things that exist, by the way, in a permanent gray area. The world isn't black and white. The world's a complex place. Sometimes things are black and white, but oftentimes things exist in a gray area. And we don't know exactly what's true. If you're going to ban people for misinformation, then shouldn't Dr. Fauci not be allowed on any of these platforms because he originally said masks don't work and you shouldn't buy them? He later on admitted, well, that wasn't exactly right. What I was trying to say was we need to save them for the frontline workers. Okay, but you didn't say that. You lied. You lied. So should he have been banned for that? Should CNN and Fox News and MSNBC and all these outlets have been banned because they pushed for the illegal Iraq war based on lies? What about anybody who Russiagated? Should they be banned if they Russiagated? Because now we know that there was absolutely nothing in regards to Russia that Mueller was able to get Trump or his cronies on. And so many stories have been proven factually wrong, like Paul Manafort meeting with Julian Assange, which was totally made up. Should The Guardian be permanently banned because that's where that story originally ran? Listen, I could go on and on. Oftentimes, the biggest purveyors of misinformation are the people who pretend like they're the people who correct the record, like they're the fact checkers. Everybody has an opinion. Everybody has their biases. There's no such thing as being perfectly objective. You know, if you're an honest actor, you always try, but sometimes you get stuff wrong. It happens. So how can you micromanage the discourse like this? What's going to happen inevitably is the power centers, the status quo, the establishment will determine what the national discourse is and what the narrative is. And guess what? When you give the people with all the money and all the power the ability to control the conversation, anybody who wants to change the status quo is on the top of the list to have the hammer dropped on them. And if you don't believe me, just look at what's already happened. Everybody was clamoring to get rid of these far-right figures on a lot of these social media outlets, and then as soon as they got rid of some of them, Soon thereafter, they went after the big Antifa accounts and took them down on Twitter, for example. On Reddit, when they took down the Donald, they went on to take down the Chapo Trap House Reddit. There's plenty of lefties who've been banned under the guise of, we think you're spreading Russian propaganda or misinformation. By the way, are we going to get to the point where you're not even allowed to dissent on very basic political questions? Because if you said, back during the lead up to the Iraq War, I don't buy it. I don't think Saddam has weapons of mass destruction, and I don't think we should invade. I think we'd be the criminals if we did that. If you said that, they would have banned you for misinformation, and history would have proven you were exactly correct. Exactly correct. I mean, you cannot go down this path. But the thing that irks me the most is that she's so casual with it. Like, she thinks nothing of it. She's like, yeah, let's have a robust enforcement strategy. If you're banned from one platform, you should be banned from all the platforms. Excuse you? Guys, we just learned from Ken Klippenstein the other day. He got a leak which found that the Navy, I believe it was, listed alongside, like, Al-Qaeda and terrorists, socialists. You're going to leave the government in control of speech when they're telling you they view, like, the Black Panthers and socialists on the same plane as Al-Qaeda? You're going to let them control the discourse? You're going to give them more power? Well, then it's going to come back to bite you in the ass. It's already come back to bite you in the ass, and it's not going to stop. It's not going to stop. It's amazing to me that people can accurately view the government and giant corporations as, like, terrible entities that need to be reeled in and you need to permanently check. But sometimes in instances like this, they're like, yeah, totally, give them more power to ban speech and censor people and deplatform. That's not going to end well. It's already not going well. And they want to ramp it up. Even when they said we want faster action against harmful posts. What does that mean? What does that mean? That means if there is a process in place, expedite it. Make it faster. Usually when you rush stuff, it's not the best thing. And so what do you want to put a fast lane in when it comes to giving people the internet death penalty? And again, define harmful. They play so loose with these terms. There are plenty of things that they would find harmful that I would find shitposting or trolling. That's totally normal. Oh, they said also they want Facebook to, like, measure and publicly track the spread of misinformation. Again, I don't know what that means. What does that mean? So this is not a good place to be in. And again, nobody even really talks about the thing that I think is the solution. There are plenty of people who are saying just break up a lot of these big companies. That's fair enough. You know, I respect that opinion. The take that I've always come back to on these issues is you should regulate them as if they're public utilities. And so then you basically expand the sphere of constitutional protections. So everybody has free speech rights. Now, again, that doesn't protect you to dox somebody or do direct threats of violence or things of that nature, but it will put us in a place where anybody who does cross those very clear, minimal but clear lines, there's an open process in order to handle that. And it's not done in the dark by Jack or Mark Zuckerberg or whatever weird committee of ghouls they appointed. I don't trust those guys. I don't trust a panel of experts on questions like this. So there you have it. It does feel like the age of, like, the totally free and open internet is coming to an end. And the more time goes by, the more they're going to want to regulate it, the more they're going to want to control the discourse and the narrative. And that's incredibly harmful, man. I mean, you guys know this because I talk about it all the time on this show, but guys, there was a time when this channel would kick the ass of CNN on YouTube. Just obliterate them. They'd release a video and get like 700 views per video. You want to know when that was the case? It was the case when the YouTube algorithm was more open and fair, and it was more of a meritocracy. So if your stuff gets eyeballs, if your stuff does well, then the algorithm promotes it more, so more people see it, so more people subscribe, so more people keep watching. And the things that, had more genuine enthusiasm and popularity around them spread far and wide. Then what happened? They decided to stop the spread of misinformation, and so they propped up sources that they viewed as respectable, authoritative sources. The same outlets that get war wrong all the time, that have their own conspiracy theories, that have their own biases, that represent the moneyed interest in the establishment, those sources are the authoritative sources. So now YouTube always props up and spreads around MSNBC, CNN, Fox News. And the other thing is, they have this other thing where, they'll promote edgy outsider stuff, but it's the pre-approved edgy outsider stuff. So, like The Daily Show or John Oliver. If you watch this show all the time and you put your YouTube on autoplay, almost all the time they'll redirect to John Oliver or some outlet like that, because they've decided, hey, we can't promote borderline content, so we need to go to authoritative content. And if you like edgy outsider stuff, well, we have pre-approved edgy outsider stuff for you, like John Oliver. And I'm not taking a shot at John Oliver or whatever, but what I am saying is it don't work the way it used to work, where if you put it on autoplay and watch secular talk, you'd come back an hour and 45 minutes later and it's still on secular talk. If you were not somebody who viewed this show, you would get recommended this stuff simply because you've watched other stuff on News and Politics, and this is News and Politics. Now, we don't spread to almost any new people. Very rare that we spread to new people. The, autoplay thing almost never goes back to us. That's why I always tell you guys, at this point, you need to, if you like this show and you want to if you want to see the stuff, you need to subscribe and you need to click the bell so you get the direct notification every time a video drops. And by the way, even then, I'm not sure it works 100% of the time. I really don't know if that works 100% of the time. But then also, if you like and comment, that should help. Theoretically, that should help in the algorithm. But I really think that there's a governor on the channels that are on the borderline content list. I think that it's a tiered system. I'm just guessing at this point, but I think it's a tiered system. So you have the stuff that's spread far and wide, always gets preferential treatment. Then you have other stuff that sometimes gets preferential treatment. Then you have stuff that doesn't get any. Then you have stuff probably a couple tiers below that are big governors on the channel to make sure they don't spread past a certain point. And I think I'm probably in one of those categories. And so any sort of liking, commenting, subscribing helps. You're more likely to see the stuff if you're subscribed to the show. So obviously, if you watch the show all the time and you don't subscribe, please subscribe. So this is what we're dealing with. These are the people, they want to control the discourse. The federal government wants to get involved, and they want, these corporate behemoths with management people who don't know their ass from their elbow. They want them to make the decisions. And those are the same people who have decided, spread the stuff everybody was trying to get away from. Spread the corporate news outlets that people don't watch when they're on TV. Shove those into people's feeds. So now, CNN used to get 700 views a video. Now they get 600,000 or whatever because YouTube pushes them out there nonstop. And they never push our stuff out there at all. So I don't trust these people. I think even though I'm a commentator and I give opinions, I still put my record up against fucking Brian Stelter or Wolf Blitzer. Are you fucking kidding me? But they get promoted and we don't. So I'm telling you, if you question the system and want to change stuff for the better, they view you like you're just as extreme as some sort of far-right white nationalist. Because anybody who questions power and authority in the status quo is not favored by the status quo and the powers that be. So just be careful what you wish for. This is not going to end well, and it's already not going well. If you want to see me and Crystal Ball interview legends like Noam Chomsky, Cornel West, and more, subscribe to Crystal Kyle and Friends on Substack. $5 a month gets you the video version a day early. Remember, we take 0 ad dollars for this podcast. Or you can sign up on Substack for free and get the audio version a day later. Link in the video description box below.